If you like DeFi and you like yield farming, then this project called Alf Protocol may be of interest to you. It is a new project built on Solana, and yes, this video is sponsored, but I'm not here to tell you to buy their token or join their pre-sale. Instead, I'll share 10 things you gotta know about them to see if you want to take a closer look yourself. So if that sounds interesting to you, then strap in my friend and let's roll the intro. Alright, the first thing you gotta know about Alf is that it's a protocol for deploying capital on Solana. That's like the super high level one-liner statement. But if we get more specific, deploying capital is things like providing liquidity into various pools or doing yield farming. And Alf Protocol lets you do those things with up to 200x leverage. Adding leverage to the picture is a key part of what makes them unique, and it's what they're trying to contribute to the existing DeFi ecosystem on Solana. This may sound quite simple, but there's a lot of moving pieces to their architecture, and they have to build a lot of things to make it all work. Now, the second thing to note about them is that their ultimate goal is to make people's capital work more efficiently for them. Their project is under the broader capital efficiency umbrella that I talked about before in my DeFi 2.0 video. They want to create more liquid markets across Solana by connecting low-risk liquidity providers with riskier investors who want to add leverage to the LP/yield farming positions. So Alf is not actually one single protocol, but rather they are a family of protocols that connect, quote, traders and investors of varying risk appetites to facilitate liquidity flows and maximize capital efficiency for all stakeholders. And for us end users, that means things like higher yields, lower rates for borrowing, lower margin requirements, lower risk of liquidation, and lower risk of impermanent loss. Moving on, the third thing to know is that there's several key components in their ecosystem that all interconnect to make things work. Here is a great diagram of the whole system that they are building out. You'll see that they have an AMM DEX, which is called AlfMM. And their money markets protocol is called AAlf, and that's where you can do lending and borrowing. And they have a leverage protocol that allows people to take leverage on various positions. And that includes some special algorithms to make sure the leverage is sound and not a threat to the overall system. All these pieces work together to incentivize participants, share liquidity, and just keep the system running smoothly in general. If any of those pieces were confusing to you, don't worry, because the fourth thing to know is that Alf Protocol's different components map very nicely to existing DeFi projects that we all recognize. Like their AlfMM DEX is most similar to Uniswap because you can do swaps on there, but it's also a DEX aggregator in some ways because it connects to Serum to facilitate trades as well. So in that sense, it could be seen as similar to 1inch. For AAlf, that's the money markets protocol for lending and borrowing. So that's very similar to compound finance if you're familiar with them. And lastly, they take a protocol controlled liquidity approach to their own liquidity. So that reminds me of Olympus DAO's model in some ways. Of course, they are not exactly the same as those projects that I mentioned, but I hope that these analogies give you a better idea of what all components they are building. That leads me to the fifth thing to know, that there's not just one type of end user in their system. Rather, there's 4 distinct types of participants that interact with their protocols. First, there's the risk-averse investor who just wants to add liquidity to some pools and earn some decent yield while protecting their principal. Second, there's the risk-seeking investor who wants to get as much yield as possible by taking leverage and then putting that liquidity into other pools. Third, there's the borrowers who want to borrow some additional working capital by putting their assets as collateral. And fourth, there's the arbitragers who want to earn some money by performing liquidations and helping Alf's system stay efficient. These participants all have different things they want, but their actions and functions are all necessary to make the system work. Moving on, the sixth thing to know is that their token Alf is a utility and governance token with 3 main functions. First is governance, of course. If you stake some Alf in the DAO module, then you can vote on various proposals, like how to use their treasury funds, what collateral they should support, and what the inflation rate should be. The second function is for rewarding participants, like you earn Alf for lending into various pools, for using their leverage protocol, and so forth. And finally, the third function is for denoting loyalty tiers. Like if you stake more Alf, you get access to higher leverage plus other rewards. This is actually a great diagram that shows their token float. You see on the left side that tokens entering the circulating supply via their token sale and rewards. And on the right side, tokens get locked up via staking for tiers and governance. And on the bottom, they get reduced via buybacks and burn programs. The buyback and burn piece isn't fully defined yet, but that's something that the DAO members can control and vote on. Staying on the topic of tokens, my 7th thing to know is that their tokenomics are super transparent, but there are some things to look out for. Like this table you can find on their pitch deck. I love that you can see all the information about their vesting periods, amount raised, and token price. That's super transparent because, believe it or not, many other projects hide this stuff these days. So bravo to the ALF team for including it. One thing I don't like as much is that only 2% of their token supply is allocated to the public sale. In general, I prefer the public sale percentages to be much higher. But like I said during the beginning of this video, I'm not here to tell you to buy their token at all. I'm just here to shed some light onto what they're building. Because after all, you can't use their products and protocols without owning/holding their token. Like I can use Uniswap or Aave or Compound without holding their respective tokens at all. As for the 8th thing to know, it's that their team is legit. And there's 2 reasons why I say that. First is because I had a video call with their CEO Matas before I agreed to cover them. Because they are a newer pre-launch project after all. And I only like to work with doxed teams that are public facing, because that means more accountability, generally speaking. He answered a bunch of my questions about which features they're going to launch first and when, and also who's backing them and supporting them. Which leads me to my second point here, that they're backed by some crypto VC funds like Zen Capital, Dust Ventures, and Dib Ventures. I know people are more hesitant of VCs in the crypto space these days, but I think this adds to their legitimacy because now they have more support and also more people to answer to. Now the 9th thing you gotta know is that they do have pre-sale going on for the ALF token. You could buy into it if you want, but there's a minimum investment of like 10 grand, so I wouldn't necessarily do it myself. I was serious, like I said before, that I'm not here to shill their token, but just here to explain what they're trying to build and spread awareness about the project/ecosystem. Last but not least, the 10th thing to know is that they have some big upcoming milestones on their roadmap. Q1 of this year, they're running their pre-sale and IDO, but they also plan to launch their MVP by the end of this quarter. So we'll be able to play around with their lending and leverage yield farming features by then. In Q2, they'll launch their DAO features and their AlfMM product. And throughout the rest of the year, they're going to launch a lot more products, but 2 long-term goals that stood out to me is that they're going to focus on multi-chain interoperability and education. The multi-chain part is part of their goal to become a homepage for all of DeFi, so they can serve users outside just the Solana ecosystem. And the education piece is to help their users figure out how to use the various pieces that they offer properly and not just go there blindly clicking buttons. Well, that's my 10 points about Alf Protocol. I hope this was a good introduction and you got a better picture of what they're all about. If there's anything else you want to know, just comment below and go check out their link in the description as well. Anyways, I'll see you on the next one and cheers!